Oceanrim, the jewel of the East Coast, the crossroads of trade and the home of 500,000 souls of all walks of life. Scoundrels, scholars, royalty and the religious. Its defensive walls have helped it stand for almost 1,000 years, and its booming trade in every imaginable market has helped it thrive. It is said that long ago, the city was put to the ultimate test of survival. Over 700 years ago, a great calamity drove an entire district of the city into the sea. A hand being cut off to save the body. Tens of thousands died. But now, there are none that remain that remember the nature of that disaster, nor whom it was that saved those that remain. Oceanrim rebuilt, thrived, and moved on, with none remaining who remember the story. Well, save for one bard.
Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So today we will begin upon probably the biggest campaign I ever did throw, Oceanrim. Now, Oceanrim to me was, I guess sort of like an Avengers Assemble sort of situation. I wanted to pluck players one by one and let them have their own adventures, and then near the end come together as like a climactic super party to come together and try and save the world, or whatever the occasion called for. So I threw a bunch of contests, I went through a bunch of entries, I picked a bunch of people, and Oceanrim is what spun out. So join me as this, I guess 1.5, 2 year long campaign sprawls out over the show, because it starts small and it just keeps getting bigger and keeps getting bigger until it just blows up. So we begin with a rather humble character, a brand new player who decided to make a rogue named Mattius the Prowler, and we're playing D&D 3.5 at the time. So if you're going to run around by yourself, Rogue is probably near the top of your list, because they get all the skill points and they get a lot of survivability when they're by themselves. And you might say, oh, well, any class is relatively good when it's by itself, except for first level wizards who always die. But Rogue is near the top of the list, because they can do pretty much anything they want, and they're pretty darn OP in the first couple of levels, just from their skill point allotment. I think the average D&D 3.5 rogue gets like 40 skill points to start with. They can do a lot of different things depending on what kind of rogue they want to be. The face rogue, the duelist, the feinter, the acrobatic, the dungeon rogue. They can fit almost any role in the party depending on what they want to do with their skill points. So I'm introducing this guy to D&D, and he asks me, and I tell him, hey, play a rogue. They've got really good survivability when they're by themselves, and you can stealth, and you get backstab, and you get all the skill points, and it's the best idea for a relatively new player who didn't understand the magic system, who didn't understand like D&D in general. And I wanted to show him how fun it could be without like throwing him into a group of veterans, so he could kind of explore and see what kind of stuff you could do with the game. And Mattius the Prowler was a a half-elf rogue who was making his way to the city of Oceanrim. Now, we join our hero, I guess you could call him that. He was, I think, chaotic neutral. Is like, he was a highwayman, you know, he would steal from people and stuff like that, so he was not good, and he was not lawful, so he put himself down as chaotic neutral. And we join our hero on a horse and cart with a farmer who is taking him across the fields, because he doesn't have a horse of his own, to the magnificent city of Oceanrim, away from a town called Pleasant Grove. Now, Mattius, being a level 1 rogue, has a slight reputation in the region as a thief, as a rogue, as a highwayman, you know. Many a young maid lost her baubles to his trade, and many a soldier shed his lifeblood on his blade. So he got to be a little too well known and decided he needed to skip town. And from outside the region, he arrived in Pleasant Grove, hitched a ride, and he's going all the way to Oceanrim because it's very easy to hide in a large city where there are 500,000 people milling around. All you've got to do is, you know, change your name and you can get a new lease on life. So, Mattius is a very simple character, and we kind of built him that way, but after a while the player kind of took over to give him his own personality, his own lot in life, and I came to find out pretty quickly that Mattius was a 3Bs character. And what are the 3Bs? The 3Bs are when your D&D party gets together to do great heroic deeds, but at the end of the day, they're kind of like murder hobos. They go from one place to another, killing stuff and grabbing loot, and, you know, the world keeps turning, and that's kind of it. Mattius was kind of like that, and he followed the 3Bs to decide if his character was happy or not. And the 3Bs are beer, blowjobs, bragging rights. So he wanted to hang out in the tavern, he wanted to bang bar wenches, and he wanted to do great deeds that would be worth bragging about when he was in the tavern. So he wanted to be sociable, he wanted to talk to people, he wanted to, you know, go to big mansions and steal shit and sell it on the black market, and, you know, join the Thieves Guild and you know, kill people for cash. There's got to be some bounties up around here anyway from somebody who doesn't like somebody else, because as long as there's at least 2 people in the world, you know, somebody's going to want somebody else dead. So Mattius decides he's going to go to Oceanrim and make his fortune there, killing people for the rich, you know, banging bar wenches, and kind of accrue his fortune. So Oceanrim is ripe with opportunity. You know, 1 million gold pieces change his hands there every day. You know, there's ships coming and going from God knows where. There's all kinds of exotic women of all races and creeds and walks of life. And it's a very, very busy, blustery place where it would not be very likely that a simple rogue, thief, highwayman would ever be narrowed down and caught. There are just too many people. It's like finding a cut purse in New York City. It's not freaking likely. So he sets his sights relatively low, being a level 1 rogue, that he wants to accrue some of the moolah, and once he's established himself, he'll decide what he's going to do next. So Mattius starts with like 100 gold pieces. He buys, you know, standard rogue fare, a dagger or some lockpicks, you know, thieves' tools and some leathers, and that's about it. Like, he didn't even have enough money for a horse. That's why he's hitching a ride. So he asks the farmer while they're making their way towards the city walls, you know, what is Oceanrim like? And he tells him all the stuff you heard beforehand. It's a great big city. It's the center of trade. It's the jewel of the East Coast. You can find pretty much anything there. You know, if you open up any of the equipment books, any of the Arcana books that talk about magic items, you can find that magic item in Oceanrim. Why? Because it's Oceanrim and they have everything. So it is in fact surrounded by farmlands as well, which is to be expected because that's a lot of freaking people, and a lot of freaking people eat a lot of freaking food. So it's farmlands and corn, beans, and squash and cows as far as the horizon in all directions, save for a couple of rivers and a forest. And, The region is relatively uninteresting because almost all of it has been tamed to feed Oceanrim. In fact, that's the entire point of Pleasant Grove, which is a day's ride west of Oceanrim, is that it is a farming community that makes a lot of dough feeding the big city. So Oceanrim is a hungry, hungry hippo with all those people there and all those trade ships bringing in stuff and all the fishermen bringing in fish and all the exotic silks and spices and everything. It's just... And I try to get across to Maddie, Oceanrim has everything. If you've got the money for it or the thieving skills, you can have it. So he's like, okay, cool. So I've got access to all the books for any kind of equipment that I want. And I go, yeah, if you've got the money, you can have it. Oceanrim has everything. Whether it be from a shady magic store on the end of Nocturne Alley or from some great stonemason whose 10 generations of his family has been cutting stone in this particular store since Oceanrim first started building the city walls, etc., etc. And finally, Mattius has kind of had his fill of the exposition, and he's like, okay, well, I thank the farmer, and I give him a couple of gold pieces, and I press on my way on foot. And Mattius, steps foot over the threshold of Oceanrim. It's like it's got the two great big siege doors that are always open, and you can't really lay siege to Oceanrim because it's like Agrabah. It's just got the giant fuck you city walls that aren't going to break for nothing, and with the number of wizards that live there, you're not going to break them down either. So I guess you might describe Oceanrim like a city-state because it's a part of a kingdom, but it kind of runs itself. There's like a duke and a magical council and, trading lords and stuff like that. The politics are just kind of like a spaghetti junction. They go in all directions, but there's not really like a king who says what happens in Oceanrim. It just kind of sits where it is as a trading hub. So, if there is a king nearby, he doesn't mess with Oceanrim because that would mess with, trading from all the 7 seas and all the continents all coming together in one place. So he doesn't fuck with it because it's great where it is. So if Oceanrim wants to run itself by whatever means, that's just fine. Now, Mattius steps foot into Oceanrim, and what's the first thing he does is like, okay, I seek out the nearest like upscale tavern. And I go, okay, and remember, this is a brand new player, so he's trying to kind of feel out what he wants to do. And he goes, well, I gotta find like a job board or something like that, a bulletin board where there's like a help wanted sign or something like that. I need to make some dough and establish myself while I'm getting used to the city. And I go, okay, well, Oceanrim is divided into 5 districts. There's the slums, the docks, the Petal District, which is like the upscale castles. Everybody lives in a castle there. The parks and what was it? Gosh, docks, Petal, commerce. Oh well, I'll think of them later. This is a long campaign. I'm sure I'll remember them at one point. And he kind of gets the layout of the city, and he goes over to the nearest tavern, and he goes in and he sits down. He orders a meal. He checks out the bulletin board, and he goes, okay, what kind of stuff's on this bulletin board? He's thinking it's going to be like his quest hub for a while. So he sets like a stack of 10 gold pieces, and that's enough for like a week to stay at that inn. So he's got like a base of operations now. He doesn't have to live on rations and sleep outside in a bedroll. He's got a bed at the inn for a week. And he looks at this bulletin board. He's like, I don't want like a lame MMO quest. I don't want to go out and kill like 10 bears and then come back and you get a loincloth made out of bear asses, I want to do something fun. It's like he hates like the idea of like go kill X or go retrieve X, things like that. He wants something that might be exciting because he likes me. He's like me. He's a like an RPG veteran. And quests usually only come in like one of like 4 or 5 flavors at the very beginning. Like, oh, there are rats in my in my cellar. Go kill them. You know, lots of super heroic rat killing. He doesn't want to do that. So, Oceanrim does, of course, have, like, mercenary guilds, mages guilds, academies. There are rumors of a thieves guild, though that's a silly rumor that nobody believes. There are talks of assassin families wandering around, tradesmen. You know, there's lots of groups and guilds and families wandering around, and he reads out through all these different things, and he goes, "There's one from the Mages Academy," and he pulls it down. And it says that the Mages Academy needs some hired muscle to follow some scholars to a graveyard while they're doing some magical sweeps for something that they are looking for. And it goes, "An escort quest, really?" And it goes, and I go, "Well, it seems like an escort quest, but also this graveyard is inside the city." And he goes, "Really? They need an escort to a graveyard inside Oceanrim?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You know, isn't there like a guard every 100 feet or whatever? Couldn't they just grab one of those guys?" It's like, "Well, if you were going to go sweep a graveyard, would you grab a police officer?" And he goes, "No, I guess not." He's like, "They've probably got permits to do whatever they're doing, but they want to make sure nobody comes and messes with them because it's a bunch of dorks in robes, you know, running around in a creepy place. Maybe they don't want to be messed with." And he goes, "All right, fine. I'll go investigate and kind of see what's what. If they put a flyer up in a tavern, they must not be expecting too much." So Mattius decides he's going to set out the next day. And of course, being in an upscale tavern, it's got all the regular commodities. He gets a bath, he shaves, he has his leathers seen to and oiled. He goes looking at bar wenches, because of course he does. And we find out pretty early that Mattius is a serious hornball. So he's kind of thinking over his plans, you know, later that night in his bedroom. He's got like his daggers laid out, and he's checking over his thieves' tools. Like, he was a highwayman before, but now he's going to be like an inner city thief or an inner city like muscle for whoever hires him. And he wants to make sure he's got everything that he needs, like rations and food, not so much, but like tools, like a crowbar, caltrops, flash powder, smoke sticks. He makes sure he's got a little bit of everything. And after a while, he brings in a prostitute, because of course he does. And while she's sucking his cock, he goes over all of his plans in his head. Like, if the Mages Academy needs somebody at this graveyard, there's probably something weird about it. And when she's done sucking him off, he asks this prostitute, because, you know, the help always knows something. And he goes, "You know, do you know anything about the graveyard at blah, blah, blah?" And no, of course she doesn't. She's a random tavern wench, and she doesn't know everything about the city, just this small part of the world that she's in. And he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, all right then, off you go." And he decides he's going to set out the next day, so he comes in fresh. So he takes the address off the help wanted flyer, and goes off to the Mages Academy. And he's introduced to their local, like, chapter leader. It's not like the master mage of the arts, or the arcane master, headmaster, whatever you want to call it. He's like the local chapter leader who's kind of commissioning this. And he goes, "Can you tell me anything about this job that you've had posted up?" And he goes, "Yes, we've been experiencing like blooms of magic with our instruments that we have mounted in the towers." And he points, and there's like antenna and little spinning wheels and things up there that are changing according to the wind, and some not according to the wind, as they detect arcane magics and stuff on the breeze. And he says, "We're detecting a form of magic that we can't quite classify." And those of you that you know your D&D magic, magic can be separated into 8 categories. You know, destruction, conjuration, abjuration, necromancy, etc., etc. But it's not part of the 8 schools, and that's puzzling them. And it's coming from the middle of this graveyard. So they want Mattius to escort and take care of 3 of their scholars as they go to this graveyard with a permit, mind you, to find the source of this unusual magic that they are detecting. And Mattius goes, well, all right, so it's not like a dark and spooky graveyard where we're going to find skeletons and liches and crap. And he goes, no, we just want somebody there to make sure they're not disturbed while they wave their instruments about and all that. And he goes, well, what's this paying? And he goes, 350 gold pieces, just to make sure you're paying close attention. And he goes, 350 gold pieces? And you remember Mattius is level 1, and he started out with 100 gold. So 350 gold pieces would be a great starting line for him to kind of establish himself. He's like, gosh, with that, I could get like boots of sneaking and freaking bracers of this and gloves of that. He's already making plans for the money he doesn't have yet. He's like, well, whatever you do with your money is your business, but you will, of course, be rewarded afterwards. So make sure you do a good job and look after these 3 gentlemen. And he introduces them, and it's exactly what you would expect. Some low-level wizards with some advanced arcane instruments that cannot be explained nor described. And he goes, all right, I'm ready to go as soon as you guys are ready. So he's got like a dagger on one hand, he's got a short sword, he's got all of his tools in his pack, and he's just got to watch after these 3 dorks in robes. That'll be fine. So they lead Mattius. He's like, okay, good luck. They lead Mattius along almost to one of Oceanrim's outer walls, to a sort of park-like setting. Well, it's taken care of like a park, but it's a graveyard. I mean, the grass is mowed, and there are flowers here and there, and the trees look nice, and things like that. It's not a dark and spooky graveyard. It's a traditionally cared-for graveyard. And as soon as they get there, the gravekeeper comes out, wants to know what all these people are doing, looking around. You don't look like you're mourning for anybody. Don't be digging any holes anywhere. He's like, don't worry, we've got a permit. And they give him a permit from the city guard that says they can do their arcane magic sweeps around here because they're detecting something unusual. So for all they know, it could be like a ring or a necklace or something that's buried with somebody, and they'll have to get another permit to exhume that person and figure out what's going on, because if a detection of magic that doesn't fit the 8 schools, they're really interested to know what that is and what it's doing and why it's in a graveyard, for that matter. So once he's got his permit, the gravekeeper kind of wanders off and gives him a good nod. All right, you're fine, just don't cause any trouble. And Mattius finds a bench and he sits down to kind of watch. So they start hammering in their pythons in a bunch of triangles around the area to kind of triangulate things, and pouring out the pixie dust and using magnifying glasses and chanting some magic words over their instruments. And they just start walking up and down the rows of gravestones. And Mattius goes, I don't suppose I know any of these people or have ever heard any of these names. And I go, no, not really. This is just a big city graveyard. There's rows and rows of gravestones. In fact, it's kind of strange with a population this big that they would have a grave site within the city walls when this would just as easily be a neighborhood. But, try telling anybody, hey, we're going to dig up this graveyard and build a house on top of it. Nobody would want to live there. Much less, where would you put the bodies? Outside in the farm fields? No, thank you. I'd rather not be tilling the soil and dig up that. But about an hour goes by, and the Mages Academy scholars are not really finding anything. So Mattius, you say, it's a great big area. He, for 350 gold pieces, he can kind of get off his ass and help. And he just kind of starts walking from gravestone to gravestone and making like a regular kind of search check or a spot check to see if he finds anything unusual. And I go, well, that grave there on the end, Mattius, Mr. Orson. the center of the O is not a part of the gravestone. It's a button that is hidden. And he goes, oh, I go and press it. He like takes the butt of his dagger in case it's a trap, and he presses it. And the mound of dirt moves to one side, a la Zelda, revealing a staircase that goes down. And he goes, hey, you guys, I think I found what we're looking for. And the scholars all gather around, and they look down into the darkness, and they kind of look at him, and they go, well, you first. He goes, what? He goes, we hired you to protect us. There could be traps, or, if that's a tomb, it could be filled with horrible, like, pressure plate traps or something like that. You first. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. So he sheathes his dagger, and he is the first one to go down into darkness. And he lights up one of his torches, and he's got his dagger in the other hand, expecting trouble, because it's D&D, and of course there's trouble. So they all follow behind him, and they lean around the corner like Scooby-Doo style, with Mattius's head and then their three heads down like a stoplight. And they find themselves in an antechamber. And off to one side of the antechamber is several sets of robes and shoes and sandals. And Mattius immediately kind of gets a weird vibe, like, is this like the Prince of Egypt? Take the sandals from your feet, for the place in which you stand is holy ground. And they go, it's hard to tell. You might want to try, checking out the symbols on the wall, or the hieroglyphs, or anything around the room. And again, he's still learning to play D&D. He's like, okay, I check out the wall. And he goes, well, there's a lot of things written there, but you can't really read them. You see lots of pictographs of, like, fish people with legs and giant krakens and, a water and ocean kind of based religion apparently was the sort that dug this place, and whoever is here, if anybody, took their shoes off before they went further inside. And he looks over at the scholars and is like, you guys are the bookish sorts, can you read this? And of course one of the scholars makes a knowledge religion check, and he fails. He's like, no, I can't read it. It's some kind of reptilian language. It's like kobold or lizard folk or naga or something that's not usually meant to be written down, because it's in pictographs like hieroglyphs. But probably only the sort of people that wrote it would be the sort of people to read it. So it's not something they can get out phonetically. And he goes, all right, well, I'm going to sneak ahead, and you guys follow behind me at like a pace of, like 50 feet or whatever. And there's like a hallway ahead of him. He pulls the door open. There's a hallway ahead of them. And there are twin columns going down maybe 100 feet. But every 30 feet or so, there's a pair of decorative orbs that light the place, like a pale blue, almost like a bioluminescent mushroom, or maybe like an anglerfish, just like a dim, like wavy sort of aqua light. And Mattius is like, okay, I sneak down the hallway. And I go, okay, Matty, as soon as you find yourself between two of those columns, you step on a pressure plate. Roll me a reflex. And he fails the reflex, and the orbs go, and they zap him for a bunch of electrical damage and knock him on his ass. And he's like, ah. And he takes a whole bunch of lightning damage. And the scholars run ahead to come and make sure he's still alive. Are you okay? No, I just got hit with a lightning bolt. So he downs one of his potions. And he goes, all right, well, this is a trap, so I'm guessing it's going to keep going because the orbs are still lit up. So he gets out his thieves' tools, and he undoes the pressure plate, and he puts it to one side. And he comes up to the next pair of columns, and, he undoes the pressure plate there. And, the second and third one both have the same trap on them. So, if for some reason the first one didn't hit, the next one would. But he disables all three of them. And they come out to a sort of great room. They kind of lean around the corner because they can hear chanting in the air. The next room is very well lit. There's a coffin in the middle of the room, and on it lays a beautiful naked woman, smeared down with devilish runes, as a group of lizard folk chant and shout and like wave their sticks over her, doing some sort of dark ritual. One of them is holding a silvery staff that shines in the strange light, and they seem to be sucking like a glittery, ethereal essence out of her mouth and out of her eyes. They seem to be like sucking her soul out or something like that with this dark rite that they're performing. And Mattius takes one look at this. There's like 5 of these guys. So, even if all the dorks in robes that he is with, if everybody came out and fight, it would still be a very close fight. And he looks behind himself and he kind of whispers everything that he's seeing. And they go, we've got like wands of magic missile we can try for. We've got to save this woman before her soul gets sucked out. And Mattius is like, you're right. So, taking advantage of the surprise round, they all burst out of the hallway. Yeah, magic missile, magic missile, magic missile. And a couple of them go down immediately, and the initiative roll is on. And the guy waving the big silvery staff goes, no, you will not interrupt our ritual. Brah! And he throws out a big force wind, throwing the scholars and Mattius up against the wall, cracking their skulls up against the wall, knocks out all 3 scholars. Mattius is like, shit. So he shoots one of them with his crossbow, grabs his dagger, and runs into battle with these guys, and it's close. It's very close, because 3 of them go down, so now it's 2-on-1, and the leader is still there. He manages a lucky hit on one of the subordinates, and manages just right under his ribs and garrotes him till he falls to one side, clutching his intestines before his blood just goes to one side. And it's Mattius versus the leader of this weird lizard man cult. And he goes, no, you don't understand what you're stopping. We are here to save civilization as you know. And he's like, you're doing some kind of horrible dark rite. Have at you. Rah! And he pulls his short sword and his dagger to dual wield, even though he doesn't have dual wielding. And the guy throws the magic missile out of his hands and starts whacking Mattius over the head with his staff. But Mattius has, the short sword and the dagger runs at him, and they go back and forth at each other. Of course, he has to stow the dagger, drink a potion, pull the dagger again, stow the dagger, drink a potion, pull it out again, and he outlasts this guy until finally he just gets him in the eye socket and pitches him onto the ground, and the staff clatters across the stone and across the wet stone floor, and the runes on this woman's body stop glowing because the ritual has been interrupted. And he kind of goes over to this coffin and he leans over this woman to check her pulse and slap her cheeks a few times gently. And she doesn't wake, but she does seem to be alive. So he grabs up the silvery staff, and as he does so, it changes length. The lizard guy he was fighting was much taller than himself, and as soon as he grabs the staff, it shortens to a comfortable length for a human being. He's like, well, that's weird. And he stuffs it in his bag. And going over to the scholars, he basically whacks them across the face. Wake up, you dorks, come on. And he wakes each of them up in turn. The woman will not wake. He tries splashing water on her face. No. So he pulls out his bedroll and kind of wraps her naked body up in this sheet and blanket. She's still got these dark blood runes all over her. He has no idea what's going on. And wraps her up in a little cocoon, just got her head sticking out. It's like, come on, we have to get this woman to a hospital. And they retreat from the graveyard with the immediate threat over. And they go to the Mages Academy after dropping this woman off at the hospital. And Mattius presents the staff that they found to the local Mage Academy, chapter leader, and they wave their little instruments over it. Of course, the instruments go crazy, and the chapter leader goes, Mattius, this is like creation magic or calling magic. And Mattius goes, calling magic? You mean like summon monster or like conjure elemental, something like that? And he goes, no, it's on a much grander scale. It just feels alien. Like if it's almost as if it were meant to speak to a deity. And he goes, a deity, really? He goes, yes. If the high priest of Pelor had a staff like this and he attuned it to his god and he wanted to speak directly with Pelor, he could like knock the staff on the ground and hold a conversation, invite the attention of his god directly unto himself. The conduit, the person who wields it determines how powerful it is. And Mattius is like, oh, well, it shrunk when I grabbed it. And he goes, well, what god do you worship? And Mattius isn't going to tell him that he worships the god of thieves. So he's like, I'm agnostic. And he goes, oh, well, that's understandable. And these guys are men of science and arcane might, so they can understand questioning religion, I guess. But he goes, this staff is way too dangerous. If someone powerful or someone evil got a hold of it, it would be a force to be reckoned with. And who knows what sort of god they were trying to call with it. They were draining this woman's spirit into it. They might have been trying to use her like an arcane battery or something to power it so they could use it for whatever nefarious purposes. Good job, Mattius. You could have just, taken the 3 scholars back and run for it, but no, you saved that woman too, and we will make sure that she hears of your heroics. Of course, here are your 350 gold pieces. We should probably destroy this staff. And Mattius is like, I can get behind that. So they prop it up in a corner, and the Mage Academy chapter leader is like, fireball, boom! And they blow the staff to smithereens. And they throw all the ashes in a hearth, and it sparks, and it makes the flames weird colors and stuff like that. But eventually it curls and dies. So whatever that was, it is no more. And the ones that were there charging it up for whatever they were doing are also no more. So Mattius walked away from the Mages Academy, having brought the 3 scholars back, and 350 gold richer, not bad. So he buys his new boots, he buys his new gloves, he's feeling like a rich man. And, he's going to go to the hospital to visit the woman that he rescued, like, the next day. And he finds her sitting up in bed, looking, small and frail and frightened because she got half of her soul sucked out. And, it takes a while to kind of rejuvenate. And he goes, does souls rejuvenate? And I go, I don't know, just go with it. She got better overnight because their ritual was incomplete. So when they destroyed the staff, her soul energy returned to her body. Let's just say that. And he goes, okay. And I go, Mattius, you can see they've been like scrubbing this woman a lot. That they're trying to get all the runes off of her body, and she's kind of self-conscious about it. And he sits and he talks with her because, she was unconscious the whole time. So it's like, who are you? Where did you get snatched from? Stuff like that. Turns out she's just a regular citizen of Oceanrim. Nobody particularly special. She must have just gotten grabbed in an alley or something, which you gotta wonder if there are lizard folk in Oceanrim. They're not out in the open, which does explain the shoes. Because if you were running around like covered in a tarp or whatever as a lizard person trying to stay in disguise, having big giant fucking talon feet probably wouldn't help you. So the boots and the shoes were probably keeping them from leaving any kind of unusual tracks. But apparently they grabbed this woman up in the dead of evening or the dead of night in the hustle and bustle of the city, and they were going to use her for this dark ritual to charge up this staff. But they failed. And Mattius is definitely the hero in all this. So she has his thanks, she kisses his forehead, thanks him, asks his name, and she gives him a silver necklace as thanks, which is worth like 25, 30 gold pieces, which of course he immediately sells. But, quest rewards gotta have rewards. So He leaves her there in the hospital and never hears from her again, but he's kind of got some cool points behind him because he saved this woman. You know, the Mages Academy at least knows his name now and may call upon him again in the future. But Mattius got what he came for, and that was some money to establish himself as a new presence in the bustling burg that is Oceanrim. So, that is where we will leave off for today, and I hope you will join me next time for another adventure here in Oceanrim on D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Hey guys, a big thank you to everyone that helped make this video possible and upgrade D&D Stories as a series. Thank you to our narrator, Rob from Performance Check. Thank you to our animator, Crown Prince. Thank you to my wife Brianna for the artwork, and thank you for watching and listening. If you like the story and like the new look that all these talented people made happen, click that like button. If you like access to maps, artwork, and other D&D Stories related stuff, be sure to check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. And if you're feeling like the generous sort, have a look at my Patreon and put a few gold coins into this humble bard's hat. Thanks, and keep gaming!